Imagine losing $2.3 million while your systems tell you everything is fine. No alarms, no warnings, just a moment of silence, and then gone. At 2:14 a.m., a single USB, plugged in for 14 seconds, outsmarted layers of security, erased itself, and vanished. The craziest part? The person responsible wasn't a hacker hiding in a basement. It was someone inside the building, trusted, routine, invisible. And what Elena Voss, the forensic expert, discovered next will make you realize this kind of theft can happen anywhere, to anyone, at any second. At 2:14 a.m., Orion Dynamics headquarters lay in near-perfect silence, the kind of stillness that made every beep, hum, or flicker feel amplified. The city slept, but the finance floor, bathed in the soft blue glow of emergency lights, felt like a different world entirely. CFO Adrian Cross sat alone in his glass-walled office, coffee long gone cold, his eyes fixed on a banking dashboard that insisted everything was normal. At first, he thought it was a mistake, a lag, a glitch, some temporary error in the system. But when the numbers refused to correct themselves, the gut punch hit. $2.3 million had vanished. Not missing. Not pending. Gone. Adrian's phone buzzed relentlessly in his hand as he dialed the bank. The calm, clinical voice on the other end confirmed what his dashboard had already told him. Credentials were valid, approvals intact, no system alerts. It all looked perfect. Too perfect. There were no failed logins, no unusual IPs, no alarms screaming across the network. According to every automated safeguard and security protocol, nothing was wrong. And yet the money was gone. The room seemed to shrink around him. Every second that ticked by felt louder than the last, as though the office itself was holding its breath. Adrian ran through every possibility. Could it be an external hack? Impossible. The firewalls, intrusion detection, and multi-factor authentication should have blocked anything from reaching the accounts. Could it be internal error? Maybe. But no one had been working at this hour. And then his eyes drifted to the CCTV feed on the wall. There it was, Marcus Hale, a contractor with routine access, walking through the finance floor at 2:13 a.m. Nothing unusual. He swiped his badge, walked briskly through the hallway, and disappeared from view. On first glance, it was just another ordinary night. Routine. Forgettable. But Adrian knew better. His years in finance had taught him that sometimes the most dangerous events are the quietest. Something about Marcus's movements didn't fit the timeline. The CFO felt an instinctual chill run down his spine. Something invisible had happened here. Systems that were supposed to protect millions had somehow obeyed a command that no human had issued. It was precise. Surgical. Untraceable. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as Adrian combed through logs, opening transaction histories, access records, and server timestamps. Every approval matched. Every user credential was accounted for. Every network node reported normal. The system's own records were a perfect alibi. And yet, the transfer had occurred. He leaned back, staring at the glowing screen, realizing that what had happened was something neither brute force nor clever hacking could explain. This was a theft invisible to the eye and to the machines designed to detect it. Outside, the night remained quiet. Not a single alarm had sounded. Not a single security guard had noticed anything amiss. On the screen, Marcus Hale's badge swipe completed without incident. Yet the forensic timeline, the invisible digital fingerprints, hinted at something far more deliberate. A clock in Adrian's office showed 2:14 a.m. 14 seconds. That was all it had taken for millions to vanish, slipping past layers of technology and oversight, unnoticed by everyone except the few who would later reconstruct the scene piece by piece. Adrian felt a cold certainty settle over him. Whoever orchestrated this had understood both the system and human behavior better than anyone else in the building. It wasn't about force. It wasn't about noise. It was about timing, trust, and invisibility. And right now, all the evidence that mattered was hidden, not in the logs, not in the cameras, but in the digital shadows that no human eye could see. As he leaned back into his chair, Adrian's gaze returned to Marcus Hale on the CCTV feed. There was nothing incriminating, nothing dramatic, just a man walking down a hallway. And yet, in the silence of the office, Adrian could feel the pulse of a crime unfolding in ways most people would never understand. Something precise, methodical, invisible, and devastating had occurred. And it was only the beginning. The morning after the transfer, the building felt different, quieter, colder, almost suspended in time. By 6 a.m., Elena Voss and her digital incident response unit had arrived. The lights in the office flickered as if uncertain whether to shine or stay dim, casting long shadows across rows of dormant computers. Elena moved with purpose, her eyes scanning every desk, every monitor, every device that might contain the secrets of the theft. This was no ordinary investigation. This was a digital crime scene, and every bite mattered. The team split efficiently, each member knowing their role. One group began isolating workstations, carefully disconnecting them from the network without triggering any automated backups that might overwrite volatile memory. Another team began imaging drives, creating bit-for-bit replicas of every storage device, verifying each hash as it was copied. The room was silent except for the soft hum of cooling fans and the occasional click of a mouse. Elena explained that every file, every memory segment, every cached credential could contain the key to understanding the impossible. Live memory capture became their first breakthrough. The team discovered subtle artifacts, temporary processes that had run and vanished, leaving almost no trace. At first glance, these were meaningless anomalies. But when cross-referenced with transaction logs, timestamps, and network sessions, the anomalies aligned in an eerie pattern. And then, as if the system itself whispered the truth, the VPN session appeared. 14 seconds. Not longer. Not shorter. A window so brief it could have been dismissed as a glitch, yet precise enough to authorize millions of dollars in transfers. Elena's team paused. Could it really be that simple? Could a single ephemeral connection, lasting less than a quarter of a minute, bypass every safeguard they double-checked, traced every packet, and verified every hash? Every piece of data confirmed it. The VPN had opened, executed its task, and disappeared. Like a phantom, it left behind only faint footprints in the system logs, yet the damage was irreversible. Then came the ghost USB. Not a physical device, not one any scanner could detect, but a trace, an auto-run process that existed in memory alone, executed and self-destructed. The team stared at the forensic outputs, disbelief mirrored in every pair of eyes. Elena leaned over the console, running the memory dump again, verifying the artifact. That IT shouldn't exist, she murmured. It can't execute without a device present. And yet, the logs proved otherwise. Tension built in the room. Even seasoned forensic analysts felt a subtle unease. This was not a case of sloppy programming or a lucky bug. It was methodical, deliberate, and precise. Every procedure they ran confirmed the impossibility. No one had manually executed commands. No keystrokes were recorded. Yet the transfer had occurred flawlessly. For hours, the team reconstructed the timeline. Each second became critical. Badge access logs, surveillance timestamps, workstation wake events, and network session histories converged. And slowly, patterns emerged. The ghost USB aligned with Marcus Hale's entry into the secure floor. Every tiny detail, the precise moment the workstation woke, the moment the VPN session opened, the moment the funds cleared, was synchronized with the contractor's movements. Questions arose. Could the system have been exploited remotely? Could malware from an external source have mimicked authorized credentials? Each lead was tested, traced, eliminated. Every false path only confirmed one chilling reality. The system had obeyed a command executed from within the building. Elena felt a tightening in her chest. This was a new kind of crime. One that didn't rely on brute force, phishing attacks, or social engineering. It was almost invisible, using existing trust, existing access, and perfect timing. The forensic team worked through line after line of code, every log meticulously verified, every hash compared, until even the smallest discrepancies were accounted for. And then the final moment of suspense arrived. The timeline fully reconstructed, the digital fingerprints meticulously aligned. Marcus Hale's movements, the USB artifact, the VPN session, and the cleared funds fit together like pieces of a machine. The realization hit the room. This wasn't just a theft. It was a perfect crime executed in seconds. 14 seconds, to be exact. A single human with routine access had triggered a cascade that millions could follow without detection. Elena's eyes met her team's. They knew the next step was crucial, identifying the human element behind this perfect sequence. The room was tense, almost holding its collective breath, knowing that the evidence was about to point directly at Marcus. One wrong step could compromise months of careful forensic work. And then, as they began to map every action to Marcus's badge swipes and workstation usage, the quiet tension transformed into something heavier, more suffocating. It wasn't just an investigation anymore. It was a reckoning. Because in that moment, the team understood that the system had been tricked expertly, surgically, and silently, and the person responsible had been walking among them the whole time. The chapter ends with the team staring at the timeline reconstruction, the room silent except for the faint hum of computers. Marcus's precise role was emerging, the contours of the crime fully visible. And as Elena leaned closer to the monitor, a chill ran down her spine. 14 seconds. 1 USB. Millions gone. And the perfect crime had just begun to reveal itself. By the time the forensic team reached Chapter 3 of their investigation, the office felt smaller, heavier, as if the walls themselves had absorbed the weight of the crime. Every keyboard, every monitor, every USB port had been cataloged, hashed, and cross-checked, yet the human element, the one piece of the puzzle that no log alone could reveal, remained elusive. Elena Voss paced slowly, eyes scanning the reconstructed timeline displayed across multiple monitors. Each second of Marcus Hale's movements, each digital footprint, was laid bare, yet the mystery persisted. How could a man, trusted, routine, and overlooked, execute something so precise without leaving a trace? The forensic team gathered around her. Analysts whispered in low tones, debating the impossible. Some suggested a sophisticated malware attack from an external source. Others hypothesized a system bug that had somehow mimicked valid credentials. But every hypothesis crumbled under the weight of the evidence. The VPN session, lasting exactly 14 seconds, aligned perfectly with Marcus's badge entry. The ghost USB autorun process executed in memory during that same window. Network logs showed a single, authorized internal connection. Cell tower metadata confirmed Marcus's phone had been inside the building at the exact time the transfer cleared. The numbers, timestamps, and digital signatures converged in perfect alignment. Elena leaned closer to the monitor, tracing the sequence once more. Human psychology, she realized, had been weaponized. Marcus didn't need to hack the system. He didn't need to manipulate firewalls or brute force passwords. The company had done the work for him, providing access, trust, and routine. Insider risk wasn't about malice. It was about oversight, and in this case, it had been fatal. Routine behavior became predictable, predictable behavior became exploitable, and exploitability became opportunity. 14 seconds. 1 USB. Millions gone. For hours, the team reviewed surveillance footage, scanning Marcus's every movement, every hesitation, every step. Nothing seemed unusual. Nothing dramatic. Just a man walking through the halls he had walked countless times before. And yet, with the timeline reconstructed, the mundane became sinister. Each small action, the swipe of a badge, the pause at the security door, the slight tilt of his laptop screen, matched the forensic data with uncanny precision. The system had obeyed a command executed in human alignment. Tension rippled through the forensic team as they dug deeper. False leads emerged, an external IP, a misconfigured firewall log, a temporary system error. For a moment, doubt crept in. Could they have been wrong? Could this all be a coincidence, a glitch in the machine? Elena silenced the room. Every team member froze, knowing that forensic science demanded certainty, not assumptions. The data spoke for itself, and the data pointed unmistakably toward Marcus. The final confirmation came quietly, without fanfare. Cell tower pings and network traces mapped precisely to Marcus's presence on the secure floor during the 14-second window. His routine movements, the ephemeral USB execution, and the VPN session aligned perfectly. There was no doubt. Every log, every hash, every digital echo confirmed it. He had not acted alone, but he had been the trigger, the human component that activated a perfectly engineered chain of events. Elena's team prepared for the interview. They knew that presenting evidence without confrontation would force Marcus to face the weight of his actions in a way no accusation could. In the sterile, windowless interview room, Marcus sat quietly, his hands folded, eyes darting only occasionally to the screens displaying badge swipes, network logs, and memory dumps. No voice raised. No dramatics. Just the stark reality of the forensic reconstruction. The confession, when it came, was measured, almost clinical. Marcus explained the routines he had exploited, the trust he had taken for granted, the sequences that had aligned to allow the theft. Even as the money was recovered and returned to Orion Dynamics accounts, a chill settled over Elena. The case seemed closed, yet a fragment of unease remained. The National CERT Archive had already begun hashing and storing the incident's forensic data when a faint, automated alert appeared. At first glance, it seemed like a residual artifact, a leftover from the logs they had already analyzed. But Elena recognized the signature immediately. The ghost USB autorun pattern, the same ephemeral 14-second execution. It had appeared in a network halfway across the globe, in a company that had no connection to Orion Dynamics. The room went silent. The forensic team stared at the monitors, understanding the implication. The method was portable. It was not isolated. It was a blueprint, precise, silent, and reproducible. Somewhere, at that very moment, another system, a different company, a different building, a different continent, was vulnerable. And someone somewhere was about to repeat the act. Elena leaned back in her chair, eyes fixed on the alert. 14 seconds. 1 USB. Millions at risk. And the clock had already started ticking again. The human factor had proven deadly, and the world was about to see that precision, invisibility, and trust could be exploited anywhere, anytime. The case was closed, but the threat, she realized, had only just begun. The office lights at Orion Dynamics flickered softly as Elena Voss sat in front of her console, staring at a world map rendered in glowing blue grids. Months of meticulous forensic work had resolved the immediate theft. Marcus Hale had confessed, the stolen money was recovered, and internal security protocols were rewritten. Yet something in the CERT Computer Emergency Response Team feed caught her eye, a small, pulsing red dot blinking on a map she had not seen before. At first, she dismissed it, expecting a delayed artifact from the archived incident. But as she zoomed in, the familiar digital signature appeared. The same ghost USB autorun pattern, the same ephemeral 14-second execution window. Her pulse quickened. The location was on a completely different continent, in a financial institution that had no connection to Orion Dynamics. The pattern was unmistakable. The method had been exported, intentionally or accidentally, and was now active elsewhere. Elena's team gathered quickly around her, analysts whispering in disbelief. No single piece of malware or hacking tool could replicate the precision of Marcus's methods so perfectly. This was not an error. This was a template, portable, silent, and terrifyingly reproducible. Elena ran the network traces, reconstructing the sequence as if she were watching Marcus execute the crime all over again. The new system had similar protocols: badge access, workstation vulnerabilities, temporarily cached credentials, and unattended USB ports. 14 seconds. 1 USB. Millions at risk. She realized the implications immediately. The theft method was no longer tied to a single person, a single building, or even a single company. It was scalable, repeatable, worldwide. The forensic team began isolating the international system remotely, attempting to identify the vulnerability, but the alert had already faded. The ephemeral autorun process had executed, erased itself, and left nothing behind. Elena's heart sank. The evidence was fleeting, the threat invisible, and the potential impact catastrophic. She instructed her team to contact local CERT units, to issue warnings, to patch what they could. But deep down, she knew it was only a matter of time. The 14-second heist could strike anywhere that relied on human trust, routine access, and seemingly flawless systems. As the hours passed, Elena traced the signature across multiple networks. Each new alert mirrored the previous pattern: short, silent, surgically precise. She reviewed surveillance footage remotely, network logs, and time-stamped memory dumps. In every case, the perpetrator, whether human or automated, had used the system's trust against itself. No brute force attacks, no phishing campaigns, no flashy hacks. Just timing, access, and invisibility. Every corporation, every bank, every institution with similar internal routines was potentially at risk. Elena leaned back, rubbing her eyes. She thought of Marcus Hale, a single contractor, blending into routine, almost invisible, and realized the blueprint could now be executed by anyone with minimal training. 14 seconds, 1 USB. The human factor was no longer a limitation. It was an advantage to the next attacker. The method had evolved from a single crime into a global threat. The CERT team began issuing alerts, but the response was slow. International coordination lagged, companies underestimated the threat, and in some cases, systems remained entirely exposed. Elena's analysts simulated possible attack scenarios, reconstructing the speed and efficiency of the perfect crime as it could unfold in Tokyo, London, New York, and Dubai. The clock ticked silently in every time zone. By the time anyone noticed, the funds could be gone again, just as they had been in Orion Dynamics. And worse, the attack could leave no fingerprints, no alarms, no traceable evidence. Elena's phone buzzed. Another alert, faint, nearly invisible, from a smaller institution in Europe. The ghost USB signature. Same pattern. Same 14-second execution. She leaned closer, realizing the terrifying truth. This wasn't a one-time method. It was a virus of trust, a blueprint for theft that could now propagate globally with terrifying speed. Every moment of delay, every routine access point, every unsecured USB port was an invitation. And somewhere, someone was about to pull the trigger. Her mind raced. Could this method be stopped before it was copied entirely? Could companies reprogram every internal system in time? Could human behavior, the routines, the trust, the oversights, ever be controlled sufficiently to prevent it? Elena knew the answer in her gut. Not completely. Not forever. She typed rapidly into her console, issuing warnings, running simulations, tracing every alert back to its origin. Screens flickered with diagrams of networks, digital fingerprints, and encrypted signatures. The team worked tirelessly, but the sense of inevitability was inescapable. 14 seconds. 1 USB. Millions at risk. And the clock was already running somewhere else, silently, invisibly. The chapter closes with Elena staring at a blinking red dot on the world map. Her voice, almost a whisper, breaks the silence. They've learned. And it's happening again. The camera of narration lingers on the red dot, pulsing, as the map stretches across continents. Somewhere, a building rests in routine trust, waiting unaware. The next 14-second heist has already begun, and no one will see it coming.